Please do not harass anyone mentioned in this video. Harassment is not condoned, nor is vigilante justice. Please do not attempt to contact those mentioned. This video is for explanation purposes only. Hi, it's Birdie, or Damage Coda 6669. So it's been what, 2 or 3 years now? Oddly enough, I'm kinda excited to be back. It's about time I get released from the internet void. So, you're probably a bit confused. Like, hey, why have I been gone so long? Why did I come back? And oh, birdie trauma! That's a pretty weird thing that I've never talked about before. I'll get into all that juicy stuff in a bit, but first, I'd like to properly introduce myself for the first time. Hi, my name is Jack, or Lucifer. My pronouns are he, it. I'm 19. I'm aroaced and gay, ooh la la. My favorite colors are red, black, and yellow. I'm a demon kitty. I love rainbows and tacos and cats and randomness. I love scene and decora K and emo, but that's pretty obvious, isn't it? I have evil autism. I love South Park, BoJack Horseman, Moral Oral, Doki Doki Literature Club, Miracle Musical, Milo Pony, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and other thingies. I have a kitty named Squirp. So during the making of this video, we got another cat, and I named her Stupid, and here she is. Well, this is the day that I adopted her, and she just got home a few hours ago. Do you want to say hi, Stupid? Oh, she's biting me. Ah! 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 You're evil. Ah! Don't bite me. Don't bite me. Stop it. I just want to pet you. Ah! Ah! Are you fucking stupid? Yes, I am. I love head pats and biting everyone in the near vicinity. I'm sick in the head. I'm omega cringe, and welcome back to my channel. First, I'd like to discuss the future of my channel with all of you, and what to expect from me from here on out. Things are going to be pretty much the same as before content-wise. I'm here to make animations that I think are neat, usually with some songs that I like. I might throw in some animation memes here and there too, because why not? I've got some animations ready to post that I really enjoyed making, and I think you'll all enjoy them too. I'll be uploading more frequently than I did before, but if you want to see more content from me, you can follow me on DeviantArt to see regular posts of my drawings, which I think are pretty cool. Or you could visit my toy house to read about my characters. I have a few story projects I've been planning for a while too, so keep an eye out for those. Like Seth's Deadly Sin. There'll be plenty of fun stuff for all of you to check out, I'm sure of it. Also, some of my art is pretty gory and contains dark themes, so be aware of that while navigating my content. I have a straw page that explains this more in detail, so I'll link that in the description, and you can read it if you'd like to know more about me. Now prepare to go crazy and lose your mind. My animations are guaranteed to give you all super autism. Hold on. I'm eating mini tacos. Now that all the fun stuff is out of the way, I'd like to start explaining why I left and why I came back. I'm going to be very vulnerable for the rest of this video, so please consider the trigger warnings at the beginning, or the ones on screen right now. If you are a member of my family watching this video, including my parents and grandparents, I kindly advise that you stop here. I do not wish to have you be part of my internet life because you have irreversibly hurt me, and I'm going to be straightforward and honest about the damage that you've done. You will be anonymous and safe from harm in my video. I ask you again, please stop watching. If you wanted to hear about the ways that you've abused me, you would have listened to me a long time ago, or reflected on your own actions. Okay, cool, bye! Go away! And also, quick thing here, to everyone else watching this, hey, I would really, 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 really appreciate it if you didn't go after my family, like you keep doing. Yeah, Squirp knows. Yeah, Squirp's based. Like, please leave them out of this. This is for explanation purposes. Like, they abused me very much, but, like, going after them is going to hurt me very much. which is probably the reason a lot of people will go after them, if they do after watching this. Which, like, I wish I could do something aside from just saying this, but this is the best I can do. I wanted to tell the truth, and I'm going to, but it might have some consequences that I don't intend. Don't be the cause of it. Don't do this to me, please. Originally, I was gonna mention here how abusive my parents have been to me my whole life, but due to recent events, I've come to find that my whole family is abusive, not just my parents, and I'd like to talk about it. Well, with the exception of my siblings, of course. I'm talking about my grandparents. This is gonna be a long story, so strap in and grab some snackies. So, let's start from the beginning. Picture this, it's 2021, right before I had my internet taken away. I was 16. So, for context, my parents are very abusive. I'll give some examples in a little bit, but first, let me put this into perspective for you. They are conservative Trump supporters. They are racist, sexist, transphobic, homophobic, anti-vaxxers, anti-maskers, conspiracy theorists, hardcore Christians, they're literally in a cult, and they have 6 kids, not including me. Ew. They have emotionally, verbally, sexually, and physically abused me for my whole life, as well as neglecting me. And I can say that my siblings have endured similar treatment. So yeah, my parents were the reason I had to take a hiatus in the first place. So, in 2021, I went through the worst breakup of my life, and I began to deteriorate emotionally and physically. One day, my parents literally swarmed me in the basement, so I hid in my room, and they screamed through the door for about an hour or more about how I'm lazy and faking depression to quote-unquote be a victim or whatever. They cut off my internet directly afterwards and they refused to bring it back. This happened when I was 14 too, except when I was 14 I ended up having a psychotic break that lasted for months, and the Wi-Fi being out was most of the reason for it. I would like to clarify that I was diagnosed with psychosis in September of 2023, so this is just something that I live with. I mean, I was diagnosed when I was 14 too, but like I was in denial about it for a long time, so like I just got diagnosed again. At the moment, I'm unsure what disorder in particular I have because I had to stop seeing my psychiatrist because I moved to another state, which I'll elaborate on in a little bit. He initially diagnosed me with depression with psychotic features, but as I elaborated on my symptoms, he realized it was something more severe and that I'm most likely schizospec. So at the moment, I just call it psychosis for convenience. So, back then, I obviously didn't want to have a psychotic break again, and I had nothing else to live for aside from the internet, so I attempted suicide. I told my parents I needed to go to the hospital because I thought I was bleeding out, when I was actually fine. And they refused to give me medical attention, and they laughed at me, and even threatened to call the police because I was quote-unquote threatening them to take me to the hospital. The next day, I heard my mom on the phone gossiping to her friends about how I attempted suicide and how stupid I was for doing it, and then treated my dad like a hero for refusing to take me to the hospital. I just listened and cried. And it's not like they couldn't afford to take me to the hospital. While I was showing psychotic symptoms at 14, they were afraid of me and hated being around me, and so they would take me to the hospital whenever they didn't want to deal with me, and they would leave me there for a few hours or overnight. I had to take a hiatus because my internet was gone for a long time, and even when I got my internet back, I decided not to come back because this place wasn't good for me mentally. And combined with my parents and with my breakup, this place would have broken me, so I decided to stay away. I found loopholes to get my internet back in 2022, without my parents' knowledge, of course. But with my internet taken away, I quickly began to realize the extent of my parents' abuse, and I realized I needed to get away from them as soon as possible. But I was only 16, and I didn't have any friends IRL, so there was nobody to save me. Eventually, an online friend, who I will not be naming here, got in contact with me and offered me a safe place to stay. The issue with this is he lived all the way in Maryland, and I lived in Washington State, so I would need to prepare to move cross-country. I waited until I turned 18, and I prepared for over a year, all while hiding my plans from my parents. I relied on this guy for my own safety, and he began to emotionally abuse me as well. He became my favorite person because guess what? I have borderline personality disorder, which I will talk about more later, which quickly worsened our unhealthy relationship. As soon as I had plans ready to purchase a plane ticket, he blocked me, leaving me back at square one, stuck in my abusive household with my parents and with no support system at all. He intended to let me stay at his mom's house, and I was under the impression that she knew I would be coming and that she was allowing me to stay there. I learned after the fact that this guy had lied to me and that his mom had no idea about our plans. Like, she just thought that I was coming to visit, not that I was gonna live there. Also, another really weird thing that this guy did is that he kept bribing me with gifts. Like, according to him, he spent either $200 to $400 on gifts for me from, like, Amazon that he planned to give to me when I arrived at his house. And, like, even weirder, I have proof that these gifts were real. He ended up sending like 3 of them to me in the mail. And he would hold these gifts over my head constantly to like manipulate me. Like whenever I did something that he didn't like, he would try to control me by being like, dude, I spent like $300 on gifts for you and you're gonna act like this? You're such a bad friend. And like, he would keep increasing the price every time he like used this tactic. Like it started out as like, I spent $200 on you, and then it went up to like $400. So honestly, I don't know how much he spent on those gifts. And also, I never asked for them. It honestly, to me, it felt like a huge burden. I never asked for any of the gifts. He just decided to love bomb me with them, and I couldn't do anything because holy shit, that's a lot of money to spend on like a manipulation tactic. If I'm being honest, that's what it is. Like, holy moly. So, now it's the beginning of 2023. I ended up moving 4 times in just this year, and I endured so much abuse, which I will elaborate on shortly. I got back on my feet quickly, and I prepared to complete my GED so I could get a job and afford to move out. Despite the significant progress I was making, my parents kicked me out very soon after I turned 18 with the intention of leaving me homeless on the streets. The day I was kicked out, I went to my grandma's house, and she allowed me to stay there and eventually decided that she would house me until I could afford to move out. I was already working towards completing my GED, so this seemed viable at the time. Issues began to arise when she expected me to wake up early to go to school 3 days a week and work on math at home for an hour every day, as well as getting to all my appointments by myself. Which I know it sounds ridiculous that this is where I began to suffer, but I dropped out of school in 9th grade and I have super autism. There's also the fact that I can't drive, so I would have to take public transportation to these education programs and wherever else every time I needed to go, and it was a 15-minute walk to the bus stop every day. It was the middle of summer and I didn't have any cool clothes thanks to my parents' neglect. There were also a shit ton of other things I was dealing with at the time, like medical shit. And speaking of which, I am chronically anemic, which means that I physically cannot exude as much energy as most people can. TLDR, I'm disabled. I know it sounds like I'm making excuses, but I swear to God, my body and my mind were not built for this kind of lifestyle. I quickly got burnt out, and when I attempted to explain this to her, she yelled at me, which forced me into obedience and led to me attending school programs in a burnt-out state for several months. I'd like to add, these programs were doing literally nothing to help me progress with my GED. I started going to a GED prep program in person, and I completed 2 of the 4 tests independently. But then I shifted my focus to math, which has always been my weakest point, and they set me up on a school Chromebook to take the GED practice test so that the curated lessons could be gauged from my answers from their website. Listen, I know how to do math. I just so happen to be much slower at it and have a hard time understanding the questions because guess what? I have a learning disability. I expressed this to the staff and I explained that I was capable of answering the questions but that I didn't understand what they were asking, and I politely asked for help and asked if there were any alternatives. They provided me with no help whatsoever despite me being on an IEP, and allowed me to basically skim through all of the questions, selecting random answers, and typing in random numbers because I couldn't give a shit if I didn't understand what it was asking. Thus, the curated lessons were inaccurate to my education level, not that it mattered because I can only process information when being taught one-on-one. So, I would have to go in there every week and stare at a screen for over an hour while pretending to do math, sometimes even trying, but not absorbing any information whatsoever. I really did want to complete my GED, so I put in an effort to be put on a tutoring list in that program, and I attended the tutoring sessions every week. The issue was, none of these tutoring sessions were one-on-one. It was a classroom setting where a tutor would write random shit on a whiteboard based on requests from other people in the classroom. And I don't know if you've noticed, but I fucking hate public school style education because throughout my entire life, being a disabled dude, I have learned nothing from it. I specifically requested tutoring so I could have help with math one-on-one, but because of the misleading role of the tutor, I made no progress at all, once again. And you know that IEP I mentioned earlier? For those unaware, IEP stands for Individualized Education Plan, and it's a tool developed by the American public education system, and it was designed for disabled kids to be given the help and assistance they need in school. I've been on an IEP during my entire time in school, and even though I officially dropped out, I tested back to be on an IEP while prepping for my GED. So, this was supposed to help me, right? Well, being on an IEP for me meant that I had to now attend an alternative high school, and I was required to show up every Friday. I would go into a classroom early in the morning every Friday and simply be asked to go on a website and study. Same exact bullshit as the GED prep program, except I had to bring my own laptop to the school, so if I managed to forget it, they would literally just have me sit in there for an hour doing nothing. Most of the time, the website wouldn't even open, and when I asked the teacher for help, she told me to just email my caseworker at the GED prep program and get her to figure it out. Completely and utterly useless. Apparently, they were also supposed to help me with emotional regulation, but that never came up in that classroom once. At the end of the school year, the teacher asked me to rate my emotional growth on a scale from 1 to 100, and even though I was fucking spiraling, I lied and said 100 because I did not want to keep going there. I don't know if you've guessed, but at this point, I've given up on my GED entirely. Fuck work anyways, it's not like I'm physically or mentally capable enough to uphold a job in the first place. Fuck capitalism, fuck the public school system, fuck ableism. Excuse me, I just wanted to rant about that whole shit show for a little bit. Kinda got off track, but I suppose it is an important part of my journey through hell this past year, so it deserves an honorable mention. Meanwhile, as I was dealing with all this, the Maryland dude from before started harassing me privately and leaking my artwork and vents publicly, and claiming I abused him, which led to a resurgence in birdie drama despite me being on hiatus and also still healing from what this guy did to me. This led to, guess what, another psychotic break. I had paranoia so extreme that I unadded all of my friends except for like 2 of them. I could no longer read texts or emails or respond to calls, I couldn't open letters, I couldn't go out in public, and it eventually got so bad that I couldn't leave my room. I started to believe that the government was monitoring me and that every human being had the potential to hurt me, and the things I was saying started making less and less sense. When I addressed these concerns with my grandparents, they laughed at me. They tried to help, I guess. I wouldn't really count this as helping because it was more so in a, this is ridiculous, let's tell it why this is ridiculous sort of tone. They gave me the classic speech of, why would the government target you in particular? What's so special about you? And I think anyone with a brain can realize that this reasoning does not work on somebody in a psychotic and delusional state. Even worse, I had paranoid reasons as to why the government was targeting me. I am not a normal person. I have a significant internet presence. People do spy on me and have in the past. I'm severely mentally ill, so I thought that maybe they were monitoring me to experiment on my psyche. I couldn't go to the GED prep program anymore. Every time I would step onto the public bus and feel the presence of every human around me, I would feel violently nauseous. Every time I would walk into the building, I would feel everyone's eyes land on me as I walked in, and I felt unexplainable terror. As I became sicker, my grandma became more and more aggressive with me. She began to yell at me more. I didn't feel safe in her house anymore, and this led to me isolating myself even further and becoming more paranoid. She eventually decided to kick me out because of my mental illness, despite me vocalizing that I wanted to get better and that I knew I could. As I grew sicker, my final weeks there, she found it more acceptable to verbally abuse me for my behavior. Knowing my therapist's office was my final safe space left in person, she emailed my therapist a mean-spirited wall of text, although my therapist decided not to give me the details because it was very hurtful towards me. During one of my appointments, she followed me inside and demanded that she is present for the appointment so she could insult me in front of my therapist. And when I gently told her no, she stormed out and told me she wasn't driving me home and that she wasn't taking me to my appointments anymore. I completely stopped leaving the house after this. I remember for that entire appointment, despite being used to this sort of behavior from my grandma, I was crying uncontrollably, because I knew that even though I didn't live with my parents anymore, I still wasn't safe from the abuse I've received my entire life. My grandma said a lot of hurtful things. I don't remember most of them, but I know that because I don't remember them, it was very not good. I do, however, remember her defending my parents for abusing me and kicking me out, and telling me that she regretted not letting me become homeless, and that she was quote-unquote rewarding me for my behavior by giving me a safe place to stay, because it was my own fault I was kicked out apparently. I remember her saying that I was manipulating her into letting me stay at her house. I remember her threatening to send me to the mental hospital involuntarily so she wouldn't have to deal with me anymore, because I relapsed back into self-harm and she thought this would be a good excuse to have me institutionalized. Honestly, I'm still suffering the effects from this psychotic episode to this day. Obviously, the psychosis is just something that I live with, but some of that paranoia still lingers. Obviously, I was extremely paranoid before this too, but after the events of the past year, I don't think I'll ever be the same. So, I had no options left, and my other family members straight up wouldn't let me stay with them. I tried to explain the situation to all of them, but none of them had a grasp on mental illness and essentially told me to just get over it or power through it. So now I had to go to a homeless shelter. It wasn't a regular homeless shelter though, it was a homeless shelter / mentoring program, which basically means that it's a homeless shelter except with responsibilities, and the owner basically chooses your life path for you, with the threat of sending you to a lesser homeless shelter if you didn't follow through with the goals he set up for you. Perfect environment for an abused, burnt out, mentally ill, paranoid dude, right? So, this all went about as well for me as you could guess. I was surrounded by other homeless people with no privacy. I was too paranoid to go outside, and I barely had any money, so I couldn't get myself groceries, and I basically began to starve. Most days, all I ate was a granola bar or two, and some days I didn't even eat at all. I stopped showering because the living space was so dirty that I didn't feel clean after showering anymore. I was in an unsafe area. People would pizza bomb the place, and there would be police outside with loaded rifles, and literally everybody would laugh it off while I hid in my room and had a panic attack. One day I got too scared to drink the water because of how dirty the sink was, and I came dangerously close to passing out due to dehydration. I began to lose weight I didn't want to lose due to the lack of food. I was barely sleeping, too. I texted my grandma one day to ask if I could have some food in her house that I knew nobody was eating, and she got mad at me and told me not to blow up her phone asking for help ever again. I essentially rotted in my room there every day, and not a single person cared. This isn't even mentioning the transphobia I experienced at the shelter. Literally everybody there would keep misgendering me, including my lesbian roommate. Like, dude, you're LGBTQ, you should know better. The owner introduced me to everyone with my dead name behind my back for literally no reason. Like, there wasn't even a legal reason for him to do this. On my last day there, the owner admitted he called me Jack instead of using my pronouns because, quote, "It's annoying how often trans people change their pronouns and it's too hard to keep track of." And then he proceeded to mansplain the concept of transphobia to me, and that some people may not agree with your lifestyle and you just have to let those people misgender you. And I had to agree with him because I didn't want to be the annoying tranny who stands up for his own rights, because that would have pissed him off for sure. So yeah, I think the month that I lived at the homeless shelter was the angriest I'd ever been in my whole life. My family abandoned me, people online were harassing me, there was nobody to save me, the people at this shelter left me to rot, and nobody even cared at all. I couldn't even cry about it because I had zero privacy. I was completely alone and I was seething with rage. I knew I needed to get the hell out of that place before I ended up killing myself, so I contacted my nana. I told her about my situation and she offered to come pick me up. I arranged for her and her husband to come pick me up and house me, and I didn't tell anybody in my family or anybody at the shelter until the day before she was showing up, because I knew they would try to keep me at the shelter. Of course, when I told the rest of my family, they were pissed. So my nana arrived and I got the hell out of there. I began staying at her place, and I quickly realized this was a really bad idea. They had me live in their garage, and the room that they placed me in had no locks and no doors. My nana and her husband very quickly became abusive. Her husband would yell at me and shove me and tug on my clothes and chase me into my room. I would hide under the bed from him, but he would just keep yelling. He would call me retarded and swear at me and yell. Every time I would go nonverbal, he would start screaming at me, and my nana would ask me why I wasn't normal, and she would enable him by telling him I was doing it on purpose because I didn't like him. Which is rich coming from her, considering she also suffers from autism and BPD and psychosis as well. Like, why aren't you normal, Karen? You guys have no idea how long I've wanted to make that joke. Her name is actually Karen. Anyways, her husband would threaten to kick me out literally every week, and this is when I started making plans for my current roommate to pick me up because I was in an urgent situation. My nana wasn't much better than her husband. She would disrespect my boundaries physically and would grab me, and she would allow her husband to yell at me and she would defend him. Every week when her husband would threaten to kick me out, I would present options of places for me to stay. I told her I could stay at a motel until my roommate came to pick me up, and she would come up with all sorts of bullshit to prevent me from having a safe place to stay. I would give her options, but she would say weird shit like she could take me to Oregon so I could live at her unfinished beach house despite her being unable to drive. She offered to buy a house in my hometown so I could stay there. She told me to just get an apartment by myself. Like, come on, in this economy, with the disabilities that I have, being unemployed? It'd be easier to cure cancer by mixing a shampoo potion together. I told her everything I said here about the homeless shelter and that was not an option. I had options on where to stay, but she straight up refused to let me go safely. She forced me to go back to the homeless shelter one day. I didn't have a choice because I had no method of transportation. There weren't any public buses in the area. I was literally in the middle of nowhere, by the way. My options were going back to the shelter or being left to the streets of this nowhere neighborhood and either starving to death or getting killed by coyotes. I got so desperate I texted my mom and my grandma for help, and my grandma told me that it was my fault for being kicked out again and yada yada, and to call the owner of the shelter so I could go back. My mom told me to go back to the shelter too. I told them both why that wasn't an option and that I needed somewhere to stay where I had a basic level of assistance because on my own I would literally starve to death, and my mom told me it would be fine and that her and my grandma would help me get groceries and get to my appointments. Where was that kind of help I needed a few months ago? Why are you all of a sudden willing to help me? Well, I didn't have a choice, so I called the owner of the shelter and asked if I could get back in. Fuck. Sorry, Squirt. The thing is, my nana and her husband threatened to kick me out so often that I made plans for my roommate to come pick me up on November 4th. Due to this information, the owner rejected me and told me I couldn't go back to the shelter. Well, I couldn't stay at my nana's house for obvious reasons, so I had to go back to my parents' house. I'm not even kidding. I stayed there for a little less than a week until my roommate was able to drive from Missouri to Washington to pick me up. For those curious, my roommate is CinnyBear03, another animation memer, furry, previous Sans fangirl. What are the chances? As of writing this, we've been living together for almost 2 months. We've known each other through the internet since we were kids, and we used to watch each other's videos on a regular basis, so it is incredibly surreal knowing that we ended up living together. But like, good surreal. I honestly don't know what I would have done without her. I know for sure I would have been homeless on the streets. It's hard to express how grateful I am to have this opportunity and to have a friend like this in general, because I've never experienced this kind of love and care and compassion until now. But I am incredibly grateful to have a chance at life, and it's all because of Cindy. Everyone in her life was telling her not to come get me, but she went out of her way to save me regardless. We had a nice road trip. We were in the car for about 2 days. We snuggled up under some blankets and watched YouTube videos, ate snacks, listened to music, talked about things, and took naps on each other. We were homeless for a few days, but her friend provided us a place to sleep until we could move into our apartment. And now we're here. We have our own place, and we're happy. Not once in my entire life did I ever think I would have a future like this. Like, up until now, I had never been in a safe environment, so I had no concept of that ever becoming a reality. I fantasized about a future like this since I was very little, and now I'm here. I'm still mentally ill, I'm still struggling, I'm still healing from my past, but I'm happy and I'm safe, and I have a chance at life. I've never had that before. And I never could have done that without Cindy. She saved my life. Holy shit, I did not mean to ramble that much. Well, time to ramble some more. So, I am notoriously known for not being good at interneting. Like, emotional outbursts, constant venting, oversharing personal information, things like that. The reason I joined the internet in the first place at 11 years old is because I wasn't loved at home, and I was being abused at school too. I had a warped view of the internet, only being a child, and I believed that all of my viewers would act as friends. I believed that I could display my emotional issues to the public and be comforted by strangers because my parents would not provide this for me. I began to get popular online at 12, but I received negative attention instead of the comfort and positivity that I wanted, and it broke me. I was trapped between worlds. I couldn't stay on the internet because it was killing me, but I also couldn't leave the internet because my home life was killing me. So I chose escapism, despite how much it was hurting me. During the times when I would have my internet forcefully taken away, my psychotic symptoms would get worse. So even if I ever chose to leave the internet, it would significantly decrease my quality of life. I would have public outbursts here because the internet was my life, and I didn't have anybody IRL to confide in. And even when I did, they would talk about me on the internet or watch videos about me. My own parents did this, which is hilarious. Like, I'm pretty sure they watched Birdie rants together on their TV. This is like cartoon villainy. And even when issues were kept private between friends, well, all of my friends were online friends. And they were only friends with me because I'm infamous here, and they wanted a piece of it. So they would leak screenshots of my personal issues and call it drama, and I'd get harassed for it. This is still continuing to this day with my ex-friends because they get gratification and support for hurting me and spreading lies, but again, I will get into this later. The internet raised me. My parents were completely absent, and whenever they were there, they showed me anger and they disliked me for who I was. But I'm not with them anymore. I'm safe and I'm happy. I've made significant progress in getting better too. Before I moved to Missouri, I had been going to therapy for almost a year, and I was working with my psychiatrist to treat my mental illness. I have a support system that I know I can trust and rely on, and even though I'm basically starting from square one, with being in a safe environment for the first time, I've been getting better. Even years before this, I've made active efforts to better myself as a person and keep an open mind and learn from my mistakes at any chance I get. I can confidently say that I have improved significantly. I've had plenty of time to grow, reflect, heal, and change as a person. And I'm really excited for you all to meet the new me. I'm ready for you all to enjoy my art, and I hope that the harassment surrounding me that has been normalized will finally stop. Let's normalize having fun on the internet instead, okay? I want this channel to be a platform that spreads positivity and awareness about mental health, and fun art for people to enjoy. But before I'm able to post things again, I would first like to dispel some things and take responsibility for the Birdie drama. After this video, I don't want to talk about birdie drama ever again, but I do want to talk about it here for the last time to clear the air, and to apologize for everyone I've hurt. So, let's delve into tier 1 of the hashtag birdie drama iceberg. Okay, I'm going to be serious again. Truthfully, I don't owe any of you an explanation for the things that have happened. I've stayed quiet about it on my platform up until now because I frankly want nothing to do with it at all, and I never have. I never talked about it because it scared me, but I've decided to come out here and talk about what happened today because the vast majority of the controversy surrounding me is false, and I believe a lot of you are simply misled or confused about the information. My therapist told me about a concept once that really stuck with me. It's called the curse of knowledge bias. She explained to me that although I know that birdie drama consists of lies and exaggerations, and I know that my parents abused me, and I know that my ex-friends are lying about me and trying to publicize personal issues, and I know that I've been taken advantage of by everybody involved in this, nobody else knows, and I'm frustrated because you cannot see what's so obvious to me. So it's time for me to tell everybody the truth, so you can all understand. Let me be clear, I still do not want anything to do with birdie drama. I would not like this drama to be continuously dragged on going forward. A lot of it makes me feel genuinely unsafe. My intention is to address the events that the public is concerned with, disprove the information, apologize for the genuine hurt that I've caused, take accountability, and then move on. And I know, this sounds like the most generic YouTuber thing ever, like coming out about allegations from years ago and apologizing for it only now. I genuinely hope I do not come across as condescending in this video for those reasons. I've waited so long because this shit is scary, I was on hiatus, I just didn't know what to say for the longest time, and people just generally don't believe me about these things. I wasn't ready to talk about it before. The harassment I've experienced from these events have hurt me, my family, my friends, and have quite literally taken my childhood away from me, and this damage is irreversible. But I've decided to address it because I need you all to understand that this needs to stop, and why. I'm not the one perpetuating this. I have been out of the public eye for 2 years, and this has still continued. I understand that I cannot change everyone's minds, because while I believe that a large portion of the people discussing this are misled, there is also a large portion who have the intent to cause genuine harm to me because they enjoy it. I also understand that some of the things I've done are genuinely unforgivable, and if you feel uncomfortable or unsafe viewing my content because of that, you don't have to stick around. So now, you're probably wondering, which parts are misinformation and which parts are true? I'm going to list off all of these events in order, so we'll get into the serious stuff later on. But for now, let's start from the beginning, shall we? So, do you guys remember when I was 12 years old and I drew porn depicting pedophilia? And instead of being concerned or wondering if I was okay, everyone got mad at me for it, and it ended up being the first thing that canceled me in the public eye? Good times. You know I was groomed by Kitty Dog, right?
Fuck starts a conversation like that? I just sat down.
Okay, I know, that was a total curveball. If you aren't aware of who Kitty Dog is, which would be shocking if you weren't, she's this super duper popular animation memer who makes very sexual videos. I'm totally not surprised that this happened. And when I was 11 to 12 years old, she was basically my idol. I made a shit ton of videos about her, and she commented on them asking me to join Discord, and you can see where this is going. I'm not going to get into the grotty details right now because it's genuinely traumatic for me, but I will include some screenshots in this section as I elaborate. Anyways, this shouldn't have been drama in the first place, but Kitty Dog encouraged me to make drawings like those, and that's why they exist. I know a few of you are probably going to say this as some sort of counter-argument, so I'd like to acknowledge it. The age gap wasn't, like, huge. I was 12 and she was 14. But, like, let's not get caught up in the logistics of grooming. I am not misusing the word. I can confidently say that this is what this was. There was a huge power dynamic. Kitty Dog was aware of the power she had over me, being a massive creator that I looked up to, and I was not old enough to consent to these things. I was 12. Another thing to bring into consideration is that apparently Kitty Dog was also being groomed during this time period, but this still doesn't excuse her behavior. Especially when we consider COCSA to be a trauma response, which stands for child-on-child sexual abuse. And yes, sexual abuse can be accounted for under messaging like Kitty Dog did. I'm aware of the fact people are still going to defend Kitty Dog in this situation, but at least acknowledge the impact this had on me as a kid. This led to the first time I got into big internet drama, and Kitty Dog completely threw me under the bus when this went down, despite encouraging me to draw art like this prior to it being publicized. She essentially made fun of me for being harassed while still pretending to be my friend. Later, when I was 13, she began drawing nsfw art of my sonas while also acknowledging that I was uncomfortable with it, but assumed that I would allow an exception for her because she's a popular creator that I looked up to. I consented to her drawing porn of me, but it was only because I was scared to say no. She started drawing nsfw art of me that depicted her sexually assaulting me, using a sona she made to represent her obsession with me, while she was dating someone else, might I add. I was very uncomfortable. A year later, when I was 14, I vented to someone telling them how uncomfortable I was with her drawing this art of me, and I sent some of it to them. They ended up leaking it, and Kitty Dog found out, and she got mad at me. I will acknowledge that I should have communicated to her myself that I was uncomfortable, but then again, I was scared to say no, and I didn't know how to communicate efficiently at that age, and I didn't intend for it to be leaked, nor did I anticipate that. She told me she was upset because the art was posted on my Encyclopedia Dramatica page, which I'm honestly still angry about because, like, she wasn't harassed from what I saw, or at the bare minimum held accountable for her actions. It was brushed aside as birdie drama, and I got the blame for it because I consented, despite me not being old enough to. It was my Encyclopedia Dramatica page. It was posted for the purpose of lolcowing me, not her. I have no idea what she's like as a person now, but I can't forgive her. She has acknowledged what she did to me, but she never made an effort to apologize to me. In her card, she expresses remorse for having hurt people in the past and vaguely apologizes publicly, but she never apologized to me. I'm not attempting to defame her or cancel her. Like I said, I don't even know her anymore. I just wanted to be honest about her treatment towards me so you can all get like a full picture of the birdie drama. Now, this wasn't as bad as the other times I've been groomed, but it still had a huge effect on the way that my brain developed. I need you to understand that animation meme community was a breeding ground for grooming to take place. These kinds of videos were made for a child audience, and the adults in this community never called this out or took any action. A lot of the adults here took advantage of people like me, and they failed people like me. My parents failed me too. They knew what kinds of videos I was making and watching, and they even knew that I was being groomed, and they didn't do anything. It's funny, when they found out I was being groomed, albeit by a different guy, they grounded me for it. I don't know if you can tell, but my childhood is like cartoonishly messed up. Anyways, I think the drama that resulted from this is pretty funny sometimes, because the main argument that ranters use is that it was illegal for me to draw porn at 12 years old. I'm sorry, but have you ever met a 12-year-old that hasn't drawn porn? If that were illegal, we'd live in some sort of dystopian society where anyone under the age of 18 would be locked up. While this is funny to me now, this was extremely traumatic to go through as a child. This was the first time I had been harassed to this degree, and as a result of this, my address was leaked for the first time. Files were contacting me, which resulted in me being groomed at least 5 more times. People were making threats to me, and my life was just ruined. Something interesting I'd like to mention, which I think is a nice segue into our next topic. Do you remember Fontik, my partner at the time? He was the one who leaked the nsfw art in the first place, which I honestly can't fault him much for considering he was 11, and it wasn't his fault that other people decided this was enough basis to harass me over or make videos about. But he leaked the nsfw images to a birdie hate server with the intention of ruining my life, he told me. I don't have proof of this, unfortunately, because he said this during one of my live streams in 2017, which is now lost media. But the disturbing factor of this is that his intention of, quote, ruining my life never went away. He's 18 now. Let's talk about him. I'm gonna be straightforward with this. Malachi is a groomer, neo-Nazi, racist, pro-shipper, school shooter idolizer, abuser, and manipulator. There are already a ton of videos about this out there, so I'm not gonna go too in-depth. I would really like to stay away from him so I could be getting some things wrong here, but basically, this dude is bad news, and this isn't surprising to me at all. Again, like the kitty dog stuff, this is probably shocking to a lot of you. Malachi managed to get my entire audience on his side for a long time while manipulating me and gaslighting me for several years. We dated 8 times, I believe, and he took advantage of me sexually. He created an alt account so that he could interact with me. Weirdly enough, while taking advantage of me, he compared himself to my groomer multiple times. And I'm talking about like the big bad one, not like kitty dog. He would ask me what my groomer would force me to do because he thought it was sexy, and for some reason he asked me to unblock my groomer. I don't remember why though, so the reasoning was probably very traumatic for me. He was aware of my obsession with him, which I will talk about here, and he used it as an opportunity to ask for my passwords for sexual favors, to terrorize me, and to intentionally try to worsen my mental state. Every time I said no to the sexual favors, he wouldn't respond to me for the rest of the day, which I know doesn't seem like a big deal to most of you, but this was a manipulation tactic which he knew was effective because when he wouldn't respond, I would become extremely emotional. As I mentioned earlier, I have borderline personality disorder. 2 significant symptoms of my disorder are a paralyzing fear of abandonment and unstable relationships. I was diagnosed recently, but Malachi was aware of these things regardless and utilized that back then. He was also my FP, or favorite person, hence why I was obsessed with him for years. Favorite person refers to an unhealthy attachment to another person that those with BPD tend to develop. I will discuss my BPD further in a separate video, but I thought I would bring it up here to further contextualize the situation. He would also ask me to draw porn of his characters with the purpose of leaking it and framing me as a groomer, which he admitted to me himself. By the way, he's literally 1 year younger than me. I've lost proof of the majority of these conversations because he would instigate sexual conversations with me on an alternate account that I no longer have access to, and he deleted a few of the messages of him being sexual on his main account so I wouldn't be able to come out about this in the future, which I think should be enough evidence that he's aware that he did something wrong and felt the need to censor it so that he could continue to manipulate my audience, while also preventing me from coming out about my experiences with him. He would gather information through some of my friends at the time to try to convince me my nightmares were real and that he could see everything I did. I made a video on the Transphobia vent account explaining to everyone that Malachi and his friends hacked into my computer and everybody dogpiled me for lying. But I wasn't lying, this is just one of the things that he made me believe. Again, I was diagnosed with psychotic symptoms, so I experienced that consistently, but because of him I was in the middle of a bad psychotic break. During this time period, he actively worsened my delusions because it was fun to him. I need you to understand that he is not the victim in this situation, nor has he ever been a good person. But I would like to take accountability for my behavior towards him. When I was 12 to 15 years old, I had an intense obsession with him, which included me archiving all of his art, and making videos about him constantly, and sexualizing him, stealing his OCs, borderline stalking him, doxing him, and encouraging harassment of him. This is something that I believe that I genuinely needed to be held accountable for, and thank you to all of you who did, but the harassment that I received because of this was not okay. I have apologized to him in private for my behavior, and everything in the past has been resolved on my end. I'm saying on my end because he never apologized to me, or even acknowledged what he did, so thanks for that. Speaking of harassment, I encourage you not to harass him either. I know I said at the beginning of this video not to harass anyone mentioned here regardless, but people like him thrive off of negative attention, and I don't want anything to do with him going forward. Please be normal on the internet, it would be so awesome. It would be so cool. Also, one thing I want to add before I, end this section is, I didn't put this in the script, but I think it's important to bring up that Malachi, at his current age, with the influence he has over people, is a groomer and has taken advantage of many people. But something really weird about this is that the people he tends to choose as his victims either have delusional attachments to me or are copying me in some way. So he in particular goes after people that are trying to be me. And that's just fucking weird. I think we can all acknowledge that. Okay, next section. So, moving forward, there are 2 livestream clips from 2017 of me threatening suicide to my dad, and another of my mom confronting me for giving out my address to somebody online. I'm not gonna play either of these clips because they were of me as a child being put in abusive situations and having an emotional response, so they're deeply triggering for me. But these clips are out there, and you can search for them if you want, I guess. I just want to say it was not okay for me to threaten suicide to my dad. Nobody should ever do this as a tactic to get what they want, and although it took several years, I've recently grown out of this behavior. But I want everybody to understand, I was 12 years old. I was a child, and my parents did not love me. They never paid attention to me, and I learned that the only way they would take me seriously is if I threatened suicide. This came from a genuine place of suicidal ideation too, so it never came across as a manipulation tactic to me until I took my hiatus and thought about my actions throughout my life. Another thing to consider is that I have BPD, and one of the symptoms of my disorder is literally suicidal threats and gestures along with self-harm. This is a facet of my disorder, but I've gotten much better at not having suicidal outbursts. And I can admit that although I've improved, I still feel suicidal at times, but I try to express it in a manner that does not come across as manipulative. The reason I told my dad I was gonna kill myself was because I was live streaming at 3 AM and I didn't realize this was something I wasn't supposed to do, so my dad walked in and told me to stop, and I said I would. He came back later on because I was taking too long and told me he was gonna cut off the Wi-Fi, and I misinterpreted what he said and I believed he was gonna cut off my internet access forever, and I told him if he did that, I would kill myself. I didn't want to be alive if my escapism was taken away, so I lashed out. I didn't mute during either of these live streams because I was caught up in the moment and I wanted people to sympathize with me. I truly believed that if people saw my emotional responses to these situations that I would be pitied, which is something that I always confused for love. It really is my fault that I decided not to mute the live stream, but at this age I didn't have the capacity to understand what happens when you put out personal things online. This is a concept I didn't even understand until recently. Let me address this stream with my mom. It started when I messaged Sticksdust, and because he lived in the same state as me, he told me if I gave him my address he would come to my house and kill me. By the way, I'd just like to mention, from what I've heard, he's chill now, so leave him alone, don't harass him. I mean, don't harass anybody, but, you know. God, I hate that I feel the need to make this a point in every section. I didn't want to be alive, so I agreed and gave him my address. He leaked it online, and this led to some bad shit. This didn't take effect immediately, but years later I was pizza bombed, things were sent to me in the mail, people showed up to my house, CPS was called to my house, and people tried to call the FBI on me, I think. I don't even know. My parents blame me for this, and every time one of these traumatic incidents would happen, they would scream at me for hours. So hey, thanks for helping me accumulate more childhood trauma, folks. You're really doing everybody a great service here. Hats off to you. Anyways, I digress. People contacted my parents about this because after they had my address, they were able to trace my parents' names, and this happened while I was live streaming. My mom came in and threatened to call the police on me for this, and I broke down. I believe this part may be cropped out of most clips of this, but the part that I remember being recorded was my mom asking me if I gave out our address, and I said that I did. Obviously, this wasn't a good situation for my mom. We were all in danger while I was living there, and we were in danger constantly. But I didn't have the maturity to realize the gravity of what I even did. And she threatened to call the cops on me, which I already had trauma from her doing in the past. After the livestream, she got my IRL friends and my siblings involved, probably to humiliate me, so yeah. I don't think it's fair to treat me as a whiny brat for having emotional responses to my parents confronting me in a serious way. I was scared of them. And as mentioned before, their abuse made me act out in a lot of ways which was normal for a child who's in an abusive household. You guys remember Toxikai, right? The dude I dated when I was 13? Well, hold on to your hats, cause we've got another curveball coming in. He groomed me. I was 13 and he was 17. I know the quote-unquote drama where he threatened to report every animation meme channel was stupid as hell, but Toxikai, Sticks, and their friends did actually end up mass reporting my channel, which is why my last one was taken down. The only other drama surrounding this dude that I can remember is that he was notorious for being a groomer, and when people found out we were dating, I started being harassed for defending him and condoning his actions supposedly, as if I wasn't being groomed myself. There's not really much drama surrounding this dude other than he's a creep, which is true and very much deserved, and I don't want to get into more of my grooming trauma right now, so I'm just gonna move on. Okay, I'm gonna be honest, this one really pisses me off. This should have never been drama in the first place, or actually, almost none of these should have been, but this one's pretty disgusting. I first came out as trans when I first turned 14, and immediately everyone started fake claiming me. The main argument was that I was faking being trans so I could get Malachi to date me because Malachi told me he wasn't into girls. I'll admit that timing was super bad, but I knew I was trans a year or two before this, and I was even aware during my childhood that I never felt like a girl. And Malachi saying he liked dudes wasn't even what cracked my egg. I knew because right around the same time I watched a video about a trans person's experience and I was like, oh my god, that's exactly how I feel. Oh my god, there's a word for this. Oh my god, I'm a dude! I knew it! So then I came out on Google+, which is really funny. And I basically just said like, hey, could you guys not refer to me by my name? And could you like not use feminine pronouns for me? That would be awesome, thanks. And the response I got was people questioning why, and people telling me I wasn't trans, and telling me that I didn't have gender dysphoria, and people trying to disprove me being trans. Of course, I told everyone I wanted to go by Lucifer, and this made people pissed because I didn't choose a normal person name or whatever. Joke's on you, I've got a normal people name, and I'm still Lucifer. I win. I would get so many comments asking me to prove my gender dysphoria to them, and I would write paragraphs in response out of fear that I wouldn't be believed, which is something that you should never do to a kid who's first realizing their gender identity. The transphobia I've experienced as a result of my infamy on the internet is insane, and if I could choose, I would have been stealth online. But I never had a choice because I had an internet presence before I transitioned. I would also like to briefly mention that while we're on this topic, that I detransitioned for a few months in 2021. The majority of people were supportive of this, but there were also a ton of people who said I was faking being trans the whole time, which is gross. I was forced to detransition due to pressure from my transphobic parents. They've threatened to kick me out for being trans, and during that time period I internalized their transphobic nonsense, and I was ashamed of myself for being trans. So I decided to become a version of myself that I thought would be loved by my parents and by the internet. But that was never me. I'm a dude. Please, for the love of God, respect that. Don't misgender me, don't deadname me, don't sexualize me for being trans. Just treat me like a person, that's all I want. I'm gonna be honest here, I don't remember much of what happened with this person or what she said about me, but from what I've heard, she said I was trying to flirt with her while she had a boyfriend. It was completely the other way around. She was trying to lead me on and would draw shit like this. Ew. I think she also claimed that I was sexual with her and called by like being in my underwear or something. And I mean, I was in my underwear, but I wasn't being weird about it. I'm just autistic and I have sensory issues with clothes, and I didn't realize at that age that that was a weird thing to do. What was weird was screenshotting me in my underwear as a minor and then posting it everywhere as drama. She was also one of the people who would collect information out of me to give to Malachi so he could try to induce paranoia and psychosis in me, so that was really cool of her. Anyways, this girl is fucking gross, and she said this about me recently, when I haven't even talked to her in years. There was another thing she tried to do in 2021 while I was in DICE, and believe me, I'll talk about the DICE stuff very soon, but my memory of Purble is fucking garbo, so I'm gonna have my best friend Al testify as to what happened. Welcome to the special guest appearance Al segment!
Hey guys, did you know that Birdie has rights? Well, I do. I also know that trying to make a soft public account so you can spy on, manipulate, and falsify grooming allegations against him to try to ruin his life is like cartoonishly evil. Because that's what Purble did, along with Dragy, Malachi, and me. To which I have to say, I really, really regret taking part in that, obviously. I just kind of thought it was going to be like a stupid troll, but they kept taking it further and further, and I just feel like shit for even associating with them in the first place. I wasn't the person pulling the trigger in this situation, as I didn't have that much involvement other than just like knowing it was happening. But I also knew about the loaded gun in the first place and didn't do anything about it, to which it's not my place to apologize to all of you about that, because you're not the person affected, but I already apologized to Jack about the shitty things I've done and said to him before, and we're friends now, we're on good terms, so that's all really matters in this situation. So let's get into the meat potatoes of Purble being, like, a bad person. Now, unfortunately, I don't have access to the main group chat where all this happened, along with DMs with some of the people involved, but, I have enough evidence to safely secure that, yeah, it was those people that were involved in this scheme. Like, very clearly, this is Malachi's art. I mean, look at it. He barely even attempted to hide his art style. Now, I understand that testimony is generally frowned upon in these kind of videos like this, and it turns into a he said, she said situation, but in my opinion, there's enough of a paper trail to give some of my words credibility. At the very least, at least take my words into consideration when you make your judgments about the people involved in this drama. So in this quote-unquote scheme, they wanted to make a fake account with the name Olive Barrow Osary so they can befriend Jack while talking about his interests, you know, like gore art and like MLP. They of course did this with the intent to spy on him and also to try to quote-unquote out him as a groomer by having him date the Olive Barrow Osary account, to which is very stupid to me, because what would they do if it didn't work? What if he just talked to them normally? Would they still try to use that as, like, evidence against him? What if he didn't share anything with them? What if he just, like, talked to them occasionally? Which is what exactly happened. He just talked to them for a bit before, you know, they got outed, obviously, for being just, like, a spy account, and he just didn't talk to them again. And to Purble, this is just, like, a big joke. To them, they don't see what they did wrong, or they do know that what they did was wrong, and they don't care. Purble even jokes about this situation even more by saying that they want to make an account specifically so they could make Jack, you know, commit suicide. Which, what kind of Isabella Loretta janky bullshit am I even witnessing right now? Like, obviously, this behavior is incredibly deplorable, and Purple's continued behavior of getting in contact with Jack just so they could spy on him again and, like, try to, like, dig up personal details of his life and try to fuck with him is, like, a continued cycle for Purble. They always do this. Again, this is where my testimony comes in, because I was there for a few times that Purble had done this. They had done this around 3 to 2 times with Jack, where they would get into contact with him, apologize for the bad things they did, and then just spy on him. They would make vents about how bad they felt for spying on him and how they felt bad for indulging in drama, and then would do the same things that they were, like, trying to apologize for, showing that they intentionally did this so they can mess with Jack. So ultimately, if you still think Purble is another victim of Birdie, then I'm sorry, then you're an idiot who's biased against someone who refuses to see the bigger picture at play. Purble is obsessed with Jack in a way in which they want Jack to suffer but cannot stop talking or thinking about him. But no one cares because, well, she's not Jack, and they just brush past whatever she does, because why would they dare change perceptions of drama when they already decided from day one Jack was the problem and no one else? And of course, she was in fucking Dice. Almost every single annoying person in the goddamn Birdie drama was in Dice for a little bit, except none of those people were dating fucking Mortis. What the fuck? That's, like, the worst part. You're gonna date, like, someone who is known to be an animal abuser and a bad person. Like, genuinely, the things that Mortis does, says, and the things that they do are, like, genuinely deplorable. And you're just gonna be like, actually, I'm gonna date them, but I'm still, like, the victim in, like, the Birdie drama. Like, they ruined my life. I think, ultimately, this just says that we need to stop giving certain people attention within Birdie drama. We need to stop giving people who were in the drama for such a short amount of time and yet had done more harm to Jack's reputation than he could ever do to theirs, like, the spotlight when it comes to listening to them in drama circles like on Birdie Twitter, Kiwi Farms, etc. We need to start acknowledging when other people in the drama who aren't Jack do horrible things, because when you just focus on one person and try to condemn them for, like, every little thing, even things that every other drama person is guilty of, like, in certain cases, like racism, you can call Jack out for that, but you won't condemn people like Julian, Styx, Jay, Purble for those things. you're a hypocrite and your ideals clearly show nothing but bias. And because you let those people get away with those things, you're just enabling them more and more to like continue this kind of behavior because they think they can get away with anything as long as they can pin it on Jack somehow. Essentially, don't flirt with someone if you're in a relationship, then get mad if they slightly return the affection, especially if you draw pictures of you giving them a head, constantly making jokes about kissing them and doing other things with them and make porno scenes with them. It's like not normal, I think, and you should take some accountability if they feel somewhat let on, to which he was just pointing out that it felt really weird that you were doing that to him and then later try to portray him as the weird one in this situation. They make sock puppet accounts to harass people with the intent to ruin their life and then try to act like you're a victim in this situation. They need to apologize to you, actually. It goes generally to more of the drama people who have been contacting us throughout this entire video. Don't contact us to try to get closure, when in reality, you just want to get on a high horse and pretend like you're the bigger person here for situations that you intentionally created, for scenarios that are entirely your fault, but somehow we need to apologize to you for and give you closure for it. Get a life, get hobbies, do anything with your life that isn't just indulging in more and more drama that is pointlessly dragging out something that honestly wasn't even that big of a issue to begin with. As a hint, you suck, I rule, TLDR, Purple sucks, and so do all of you people for enabling her and other people in this community that do nothing but bring more harm than good.
So, I mentioned earlier that I need to breathe. So, I mentioned earlier that when I was 14, I had a pretty bad psychotic episode. I ended up making a few animations that depicted this, the most notable two being That Boy Needs Therapy and Spitting Out the Demons. People took these videos as me normalizing mental illness, as if that were, like, bad, or that I was too mentally ill, which is, like, fucking insane. How mentally ill is too mentally ill? Is mental illness measured by how socially acceptable one's behavior is? That's a disgusting thing to say about a mentally ill teen. By the way, I think we should totally destigmatize psychosis and other mental illnesses so people like me can get help whenever symptoms like these occur. Anyways, this one's a pretty minor offense, but before I move on to the serious allegations, which are coming up right after this, I like to say that I had no idea what I was even depicting. I was in denial about my psychosis despite being diagnosed, and all I knew was that I was hallucinating and everyone thought I was crazy. I had no idea how to separate my personal life from the internet, so I ended up making videos about it. This is something that I will no longer be doing in the future. During my break, I've realized how to keep my private life private. I'll still be posting vents because I'm allowed to, but they won't include oversharing and personal details like before. I'm gonna be honest with all of you, I don't even know what Carol was. She wasn't an alter because she couldn't take control of my body, and she wasn't a tulpa or imaginary friend because she was not intentionally created. For simplicity, I will be calling her a headmate in this section. Similarly to the psychosis drama, this should have never been drama to begin with because it's weird to make a spectacle of a teen struggling with mental illness, and it absolutely made me worse. I wasn't attempting to, like, fake DID or anything. That was never my intention if it did come across that way. I don't have any active headmates at the moment, but I do have a history of them. Carol, Marilyn, Susie, Racco, Goofball, Playdate, and even Edgy Jack were all sentient beings with their own thoughts and emotions who originated from my brain. I really wish I had a concise conclusion or answer for this, but I don't. When Carol first appeared when I was 14, I went all the way to fucking Seattle Children's Hospital to see a psychiatrist, only for him to brush me off for being autistic and tell me that I have a vivid imagination and that it was just the autism. Funnily enough, I experienced the same thing when trying to explain to my therapist that I thought I had BPD, which I am now diagnosed with. Ableism in the mental health system, especially directed at autistic individuals, is unfortunately very common, and now I'm mad. Anyways, I don't really have a point here. I don't know what Carol was, and it shouldn't have been drama, and that's that. I acknowledge I was very transphobic and racist in the past, and often used slurs I couldn't reclaim, arguing with people of color about the slur usage, misgendering people and calling them trenders, and generally being very insensitive with matters that come to race and how people would express their gender identity. I won't be showing these on screen because these can be very triggering for some of my viewers, but these screenshots are out there, and if you want to see them, you could just search for them. I understand this is very serious and it was only 3 years ago, so I don't expect anyone to forgive me for just saying I'm sorry, but please understand that I've changed as a person and I have not maintained these views since I started my hiatus, and that I understand my own ignorance and internalized transphobia that led to me saying those kinds of things. I don't use slurs like that anymore and have become more open to all sorts of trans individuals and have put in the effort to listen to people of color about these issues. You don't have to forgive me, and I'd rather not have anybody defend me on these points because these are very rational reasons to be angry with me. If you feel uncomfortable or unsafe watching my videos because of the things I've said in the past, you have every right to leave. But please at least acknowledge I've moved on from these beliefs and I'm actively working to become a less intolerant person. To all of my trans viewers and people of color in the audience, I love you all, and I'm sorry, and I hope you're able to enjoy my content moving forward.
Hello, it's Al again, here for an audition. Okay, so I'm just going to be further expanding on Jack's part, because I wanted to help him word it in a way that made sense, because not only am I a trans person too, but I'm also, Latino, so I feel like my word has a bit more holding than his, because he's a little cracker. Along with educating himself further on differing issues and having more nuanced and progressive ideals on the expression of gender and neol pronouns, to which he literally uses it's now and is a fucking femboy! Okay, he's making a lot of large strides and undoing a lot of internalized transphobia, to which I have to say, he wouldn't have that severe internalized transphobia if you guys didn't fucking hound him when he was 14 to prove that he was trans and spewing his ideas with like a bunch of true scum ideology, to which he would later use because he was insecure about like his own expression of gender. Wowee, I wonder if it's a perpetual cycle of like insecure teens just feeling bad about themselves and spewing out this hateful ideology. It's almost like if we just talked to him about it and were more accepting, then he wouldn't have ended up like that. Whoa, crazy. But yeah, he is a lot more of accepting a person and if you have ever been like misgendered by him before or like been harassed because he was like being a little shitlet, then we'll issue a proper apology to you if you just ask. Like, genuinely, we're just here to right wrongs and make up for a lot of the bad things that he has done. Speaking of bad things, it's time we talk about slur usage, to which it's bad, obviously. Like, there's no real defense for it. I guess you can make like reasons explaining why he would do it, but then that's not really me defending him, that's me just explaining why. Like, hey, that's why he said he thought using slurs for that long was okay. Like having having extremely racist parents or extremely racist friends that would enable his behavior. But like, that doesn't really excuse what he's done, to which we're not excusing it. We're here to apologize for it, and we hope that you can forgive them for it. He has, again, been making a lot of strides and undoing a lot of his internalized transphobia and, racism that he learned while online and from his parents and from a lot of other places. And I can vouch, because, I'm a fucking person of color. I'm Mexican. I can vouch that, he's just more sensitive and, aware of the things that he does with his characters that might be minorities and wants to be more diverse with his characters and his designs and overall art and everything about that, which is good. He's learning, which is what you would want and you would hope that he would do. But also, I just want to brush up on this. If you're a white person, don't fucking comment on this section of the video, because you can't accept the apology, obviously. It's not for you. If there's one thing in this drama that you should hold him accountable for, it should be like him being like a racist little shit as a teen. To which, again, I have to state that he generally has been making a lot of progress on doing a lot of the racism he was taught as a little youngin', because hashtag Trump supporter parents. But at the same time, if you don't forgive him for that, then you're allowed to. Like, come on. It's like, you get to decide whether or not you accept the apology as, like, you know, the viewers that are affected by his slur usage. But also, if you are going to hold him accountable, then I also ask that you at least attempt to hold, like, the other Birdie drama people accountable for their racism. Like, Malachi was, like, super racist. Like, remember the fucking account they made out, the entire punchline was just like, look, it's a black woman. She looks insane and weird. That's funny. It's like, how did you guys let that pass, but then, like, want to hold Jack accountable and only Jack accountable? So, TDLR, only accept the apology for the racist if you're black, except that he's also tried to make changes about the things that he's said and done in the past. If you want an apology, then contact him for, like, being a transphobic little shit. And also, hold other people accountable, please. There's a large imbalance of, like, accountability within Birdie drama, and it'd be really nice if you guys would, like, start holding other people accountable for, like, things that happen within the drama instead of just, like, you know, just making the 5 million rant videos on Jack. That's the last audition of the video. See you never again.
I would also like to mention that in 2020, I made jokes about SA that were completely unwarranted and disrespectful to other victims out there, and I'm sorry for this too. I myself am a victim of CSA, but I didn't find out until earlier in 2023, so it doesn't make up for these jokes in the slightest. I'm sorry for the person I was in 2020, I was genuinely just a bad person. I would also like to acknowledge that during this time period, I would harass my ex-friends and play cruel pranks on them just because I didn't like them and wanted to get rid of them, which is the worst thing ever, I think. Holy shit. I've apologized in private to all of the people I've hurt, which includes the people who I harassed, and I wish all of them the best. I know that I truly have hurt people, and I hope that all those people out there are having peace with me out of their lives. This is a rumor I would especially like to disprove because my ferret Chara passed away in November of 2022, and I don't want my baby girl to be remembered that way. So, there's this screenshot that my ex spread around of me saying I sexually abused my ferret. Of course, if this was true, that would be fucking deplorable, and holy shit, you'd have to send me to jail. Straight to jail. That would be it. You'd have to lock me up and throw away the key, guys. But, there's a shit ton of context missing from this. Admittedly, I didn't mention this in the screenshot, but the reason this happened is because I was groomed into it when I was 13 years old. I don't have proof of this because I lost the DMs with my groomer, nor do I even want to find them. I don't even want to say his name because this was the most traumatic time that I was groomed. I've been groomed several times, obviously, but this was the worst, and I don't want to talk about it for that long publicly. Another thing I'd like to point out, which is almost as important as the grooming context, is that right in the screenshot I said I didn't even go through with it. Like, it never even happened. I just prepared to do it because I was 13 and I was told to. This was extremely traumatic for me, which is why, despite the fact that these accusations were hurting me more than any of the ones before this, I didn't address it publicly. After this happened, I would cry every time I saw my ferret, and I had reoccurring nightmares about this. I was a victim in this situation, and so was Chara. While on the topic of my ferret, I would also like to address the neglect, because this holds much more merit than the abuse I just mentioned. I got Chara for my 12th birthday with no prior knowledge of ferrets or how to care for them. I didn't know how to clean up after her, I didn't know what food she was supposed to eat, I didn't know how to hold her, I didn't even know that she wasn't supposed to live in her cage, and I barely knew anything about her. This is entirely my parents' fault for buying me this animal knowing I was unprepared for it. Despite all of this, I researched ferrets more as I grew up and learned what she needed to thrive, but my parents wouldn't give her what she needed. I was a minor and I wasn't allowed to buy anything, so despite how much I begged, I couldn't get a bigger cage for her, and I couldn't get her a buddy to live with because you're always supposed to have more than one ferret. I couldn't get her higher quality food, and my parents wouldn't even take her to the vet. I did the best that I could for her despite my circumstances, and I would take her out every day to play, I would feed her eggs and meat as a treat to keep her healthy, I would clean her cage every day, and she would get plenty of love and attention. But I will admit that during the ages of 12 to 14, I didn't take care of her properly. I almost gave her away because I admitted that she wasn't the right pet for me to be taking care of because I could barely take care of myself. But once I did my research, I made it work, and she was very happy for a while before she passed away. I couldn't provide the best life for her because I was never prepared to own a ferret. And although she didn't deserve me, I really did my best for her, even though I wish I could have done so much more. I've since become a much better pet owner. I adopted Squirp a while ago after taking care of numerous cats for years and doing plenty of research, along with waiting until my mental health had improved and I was in a safe environment. I wish Chara could have had the kind of life that Squirp has, but it's too late. She was 6 years old when she passed away, and I miss her more than anything. Let's remember her in a better light. She was sweet, playful, affectionate, and full of life. She was my baby. Okay, I'm not sure if anyone even remembers them. Basically, they were this group of people who would make rants about me because they were my friends for like a month and they thought that was enough basis to talk about how I like traumatized them or something. I mean, considering this was 2020, that was pretty reasonable for like who I was. But what was really fucking weird about evidence found is that the majority of them were like adults obsessively making videos about a 15-year-old and harassing me for some reason. Yeah, these people are weird and I don't like them. All of the 18+ members were extremely weird and talked about me and other minors in extremely inappropriate ways. However, I don't have any proof of this and I only found out about this recently, so I'm not really gonna delve into it. Anyways, maybe we shouldn't trust people who are just mad that they're not my friend anymore. Maybe gossip channels are inherently bad places to receive information, especially if they're biased and don't even know the person in question that well. Here's a pro tip. None of you know me. You're all a bunch of parasocial Andes. Okay, look. This dude's a piece of shit. I'm gonna be quick here because, as far as I know, this dude genuinely gets off to internet drama and he's fucking obsessed with me. But basically, as dramatic as this sounds, he's the ringleader here. He's been spearheading Birdie drama since 2020 because I broke up with him. I didn't take advantage of him sexually, everything was consensual, and he never expressed any discomfort or distress. I didn't cheat on him, I was in a polycule with him and my other boyfriend at the time, which we all consented to. He cheated on me, would guilt trip me nonstop for being in a polycule that we all consented to, and after we broke up he would talk about my genitals 24/7 in detail, and then he leaked my nudes from when I was freshly 15 years old and dismissed it as quote-unquote high school drama. That's child porn, Julian. You own and sent child porn. Not to mention, Julian sent those nudes to his other ex, and also, fun fact, revenge porn is illegal in the state of California, and so is sharing CP, even if you yourself are a minor. That isn't to say that law overrides morality, but I'm just making a point here that this is both immoral and illegal. This guy has been harassing me nonstop when I did literally nothing to him except for break up with him, and he is quite literally the man behind the drama. Anyways, I fucking hate this guy and I want to never talk about him ever again. I just want to put this here because I think you should all really stop supporting him. Also, he's racist and drew fetishized essay art. I'm not showing these on screen because, again, it's incredibly triggering, but I'll put a link to a Google Doc in the description showing what he did. Okay, cool. Moving on. Never gonna talk about Julian ever again. I've decided to rewrite this section last minute because the situation I'm about to describe is more morally gray than I remembered it being, and requires more nuance on my part in order to explain it. In 2021, I went through my breakup, aka the most traumatic event of my life. I know this sounds dumb, but again, I have big penis disorder. And a simple breakup is gonna feel drastically different for me than it does for other people. This breakup alone put me into another psychotic state where I was essentially dissociating 24/7 and became unable to make proper judgment anymore. Exactly 5 days after said breakup, I was asked out by my former friend Dragy, who was 13. I was 16, and it was my responsibility as the older person to turn them down, but because of the mental state I was in, I was unable to make the right decision. They were entirely aware of the mental state I was in. I addressed my worries with us dating, but they insisted that they wanted to date me, so I agreed. Our relationship lasted less than a week, and nothing of a romantic or sexual nature happened at all. I never instigated anything with this person. Fun fact, I was already aroace at this point in time, but I wasn't aware of it yet, so I didn't even experience any attraction towards this person, which can be corroborated by the things I said during this time period. You can also see several instances of me establishing with them that I was not in the right state of mind to be making any proper decisions. But despite the sheer amount of times I said I wasn't in the right state of mind, they continued to pursue me anyways, which, I mean, what can I say? They were 13. Again, it was my responsibility to turn them down, which I would have done if I was, like, lucid, but in all honesty, I think I was taken advantage of. I'll come back to this point again once I finish explaining the full sequence of events. So we broke up after dating for less than a week and nothing happening between us, and immediately afterwards they began spreading grooming allegations in birdie drama circles. I'll admit, because of the weird-ass circumstances, their rumors kinda had merit. There's one screenshot in particular where I told them I thought they were mature for their age, and that was partially why I wanted to date them, which is really fucking gross in hindsight. Oh my god. I'm not gonna defend myself for saying that because that is groomer behavior and it wasn't okay for me to say that. I will, however, provide context for it because although what I said was inappropriate, my intentions were not. The conversation started when I wanted to address the pros and cons of us dating like a robot because I'm aroace and I didn't feel anything for them, like I said, and it eventually became a talk about emotional maturity in relationships. Dragy vented to me and told me they thought they were emotionally mature for their age, so I tried to comfort them by agreeing with them and explaining that emotional maturity is a trait that would be desirable in a partner. Of course, as you can see, this did not come out sounding normal. The way I phrased this was gross because I didn't know what I was saying. My brains were scrambled. And honestly, besides agreeing to date them, I think this is the only actual instance where I said something weird to them. I even confirmed a few months later that my intentions were to comfort them as a friend, and this wasn't an attempt at, like, flirting or trying to manipulate them. The reason I had to confirm my intentions, however, is because months later, in fucking Dice, Dragy sexualized my wording in this situation in a way that romanticizes grooming. If this isn't enough for you, I want you to know that it was also paired with this screenshot where Dragy admits to wanting to groom and rape Olive Bear, an account that was made to represent an 11-year-old child. Dragy's action of condemning my supposed grooming in the birdie drama community was entirely performative, and in reality they fetishize and get off to grooming and child abuse, and their sole intention when coming out about this was to try to slander me. They never even saw my actions as grooming in the first place. They admitted to me twice that others gave them the idea to label it as grooming. Back to when I said I think they took advantage of me, let me explain that too. I can't really say for sure, but like, I think this whole thing was planned. The timing of asking me out 5 days, only 5 days after my breakup, and waiting for me to be in a vulnerable state, along with all of the evidence shown here, leads me to believe that this was all with the intention of getting dirt on me, similar to Olive Bear, which from what I believe Dragy was also behind, but I don't have any evidence, so I can't really say for sure. My conclusion is, I think it would be inaccurate and slanderous to label me as a groomer with this incident in mind. Despite the moral grayness of this, I do not personally view it as grooming, as I believe I was manipulated into a situation where I could be made to look bad while I couldn't even think for myself. Speaking of decisions I made while my brain was melted, joining Dice was one of those. So why don't we talk about that one next? So I'm sure, as you all know, I was in Dice for a little bit. Just to let you know, I didn't, like, create Dice, obviously. I didn't, like, partake in evil cult stuff. I was literally there for, like, 2 weeks, and it was traumatic for me. I joined Dice because I went through a breakup, the 2021 breakup, that was the worst thing that ever happened to me. and I was suicidal, so I asked if I could join because I wanted to be encouraged to hurt myself. Mortis was trying to take advantage of me, pedophiles were trying to flirt with me, people were just obsessing over me, and it was not a pleasant experience. I never condoned the zoophilic, pedophilic nature of DICE, and when I learned that that's what was supported in that server, I left and never spoke to Mortis ever again. I don't know how many of you are aware, but like almost everybody making drama posts about me were a part of DICE, so I don't know why I'm the only person who's being talked about as some spooky evil cult person. Spreading lies about my contribution to DICE, or lack thereof, makes it harder for me and other ex-members to come out about our experiences because everyone wants someone else to blame, when you should all be blaming the leader, Mortis. It was a traumatic experience and I don't want to be associated with DICE anymore. The people in charge of DICE are fucking disgusting and I hate all of them. Seth's Deadly Sin is a game idea I came up with when I was 16, and I plan to continue the project and the characters in the future. The content that was leaked preemptively by others does not actually give full context as to what it was actually about, and generally most assumptions about the characters and the plot are misconstrued due to misinformation. I would also like to add that literally every single leak is outdated and is no longer accurate to the plot or characters. The sexualization of the minor characters was done while I was a minor myself, as I was 16 during the making of the concept art and every character I sexualized was 15 or 16, but as I grew older I became uncomfortable with the concepts depicted and all of the characters are now adults. I would like to make it a point that I don't condone the romanticization of self-harm, toxic relationships, or the dark subjects explored in Seth's Deadly Sin, as it isn't what this series was intended to do. Seth's Deadly Sin is inspired by old RPG Maker games from the 2000s, and its main themes are severe mental illness, all coming from my own personal experiences. Which I'm allowed to do, by the way. Really funny that I have to say that. I would quickly like to mention that every artist ever takes from their own personal experiences to create stories. That isn't to say that the entire thing is a vent and that I'm oversharing personal details. It's merely a story about mental illness and coming to terms with your past. The assumption that the characters, specifically June Nguyen, being connected to Shotokan is just plainly wrong and really fucking gross, and that's obviously not condoned either, oh my god. It makes me extremely uncomfortable how some of my supposed fans have taken it upon themselves to more or less fetishize him and start making weird miniature fandoms surrounding him. Although I appreciate the fans surrounding my passion project, I am immensely uncomfortable with fans discussing the game and creating fan art while I was on hiatus, and being unable to release any official content myself on my own terms. It's my art and it's very personal to me, and I didn't consent to that being publicized. The feeling of being perceived and picked apart and analyzed while trying to avoid a public audience as a schizospec guy is terrifying beyond words. A majority of the older concepts that were inherently problematic have changed, and the story and the characters in general have changed drastically, as opposed to the art that was leaked. The story is more of a dark exploration of mental health issues as a result of intense childhood trauma, and it was never intended to promote or romanticize said issues. Going forward, while interacting with Seth's Deadly Sin, I please ask that 1. You aren't fucking weird about my characters, and 2. Stop putting words in my mouth about the series, and 3. Handle subject matters inside maturely, and 4. Acknowledge that again, the actions in it are not condoned. Also, I would like to briefly mention that the dude claiming June is related to Shotokan is fucking Julian. And I would like to make it a point again not to give this guy a platform, because the only reason he's claiming these things is because he's mad I'm not friends with him anymore. I was briefly friends with him last year, and he was obsessed with June, and had no issues with him whatsoever. This is a common theme with Julian, like, not just Julian, but everyone perpetuating this drama. They're extremely hypocritical and petty, and I wanted to provide an example of this here. I'm 19 now, and I'm not even going to entertain Julian or other drama people's ideas. It's mostly just random assumptions and lies made by weird, petty, parasocial Andes, and I advise against supporting these ideas yourself, as their proof is just speculation and their takes aren't nuanced in the slightest. Let's all be adults and not resort to petty name-calling and chicanery. I would like to add that an incredibly serious allegation came out about me while in the making of this video. There's been a fake screenshot made to make it look like I admitted to SAing my sister. I know for a fact that I've never hurt another person like this, let alone one of my siblings, but there's no concrete way to disprove things like this. There's no evidence of it not happening, and there's no evidence of it happening aside from the screenshot. The person who falsified this screenshot has added details that make this especially hard to disprove, such as claiming the assault happened while my sister was asleep. I've talked with my sister in depth about this on multiple occasions, and we're both confident that this never happened and that the screenshot is definitely fake. There's been a disturbing theme in the birdie drama community of falsifying incest between me and my sister, such as nsfw art and SA accusations like these. We're both extremely uncomfortable and upset and sickened with these claims, and I myself even feeling traumatized from seeing falsified incest art of me and my sister when I was a child, me being 12 and my sister only being 9. The screenshot that came out recently even put the, quote, situation into a context that had us both being those ages, which is especially disturbing. SA is a traumatic situation any way you spin it, but intentionally framing it as us being young children is sickening. My sister wants nothing to do with birdie drama, and I advise that you stop making these accusations or believing things said about me right off the bat. Which is immensely difficult to say, because I know it's hard enough for actual SA victims to be believed in the first place, and disgusting lies like this make it even harder for victims to come out about their experiences. I myself am saying this as a victim of CSA and incest, which is why these accusations are particularly insulting. There's been a long history of people making things up about me with the intention of garnering sympathy for themselves or having me face legal repercussions for things I didn't do, or even driving me to suicide. Please take everything said about me from a third-party source with a grain of salt. And please, for the love of God, leave my sister out of this. She's only 16 and doesn't need this kind of trauma. Also, she told me to tell all of you that she's, like, epic and, like, cool and awesome and, like... And she totally is. Can confirm. Hey, Alvina, if you're watching this, you're, like, epic. You're, like, my super best friend. Although I don't have any evidence that this didn't happen, I believe I know the person who made this screenshot. I was contacted on August 21st, and the screenshot was leaked on August 24th. The person who contacted me is known for falsifying screenshots and has publicized lies about me in the past. This is also the same person who claimed I groomed them in 2021. I believe that the screenshot was created as a result of me rejecting this person. They have a tendency to take revenge like this, and a ton of drama people in general are just jealous because I won't be friends with them or date them. I've since cut contact with them. I provided a video of me doing so because I'm aware of how easy it is to fake screenshots. I mean, duh, that's what this whole section is about, but like, yeah. As someone with immense sexual trauma, as a victim of grooming, as a victim of covert incest instigated by my mom, as a victim of CSA instigated by my dad, it is never okay to lie about these things. This kind of shit is why we're never believed. My heart goes out to all of the other victims of sexual assault and incest, and I wish you all the space to heal and to be believed. I'm sorry that this video ended up on such a serious note. I couldn't not address this. Peace. Oh my god, this is so annoying. Okay, so, like, I'm adding this, like, last minute, right? I don't even, like, have a script for this part. I'm just, like, I have, like, bullet points in front of me. I do fucking awful with bullet points, so I'm so sorry in advance for all the, like, all the stuttering and shit. I'm so sorry. But, I have to add this last minute because I didn't think anyone gave a shit about this until I announced that I had to quit my side channel in March of 2024 for my own safety because it was becoming objectively unsafe to post on there. What you say? After I announced that I was leaving that side channel, I got like a ton of backlash and a ton of like weird comments, which is funny because they're all just proving exactly what I said in my video, that channel was not like a fun parody account anymore. It was just somewhere for me to be like harassed and stalked and made fun of all over again, because that's what I said in my video and it came true, so I think that's very funny. However, a lot of these comments were making allegations that I'm a predator and that I am friends with minors as a 19-year-old. And it's so easy to disprove this that I just wanted to make a very quick section where I do so, because that's just objectively false. That's just a lie. And those people are weird. So, I'd like to talk about it for a little bit. Just for a minute. And then I'll get to the conclusion of my video. I'd like to start with saying that although this allegation is fake, the reason that it was made is because it's a very easy allegation to make. Like, on the internet, you could call anyone, like, a pedophile, and somebody's gonna side with you, because that's just how the internet functions, right? I'd like to say that when people fabricate these kind of allegations, they are never out of a place of care for any victims or any minors of the situation. It's always about pointing fingers. And I know this because when I was a minor and I was being groomed, it was very, very publicly known that I was speaking to adults, and it was quite obvious from my behavior and the things that I was saying, and the things that were leaked in particular, that I was being groomed. And nobody cared. So it's never about, like, care or concern. It's always about trying to make someone look bad. In fact, this allegation only became relevant because I became a legal adult, and it started when I turned 18, because people were waiting for me to turn 18 so that they could call me a groomer and a pedophile. Because if they were making those rumors about me as a minor, it wouldn't make much sense, right? So they were waiting for my 18th birthday to roll around, like a year ago, or 2 years ago. I don't know when my birthday was. The age of 18 itself isn't even, like, a mature age anyways. Like I was barely an adult when this rumor started. You know, I'm still a teenager, like, right now. I'm only 19, like, my brain is not fully developed. Anyways, the semantics of, like, age and stuff on the internet, like, trying to navigate, like, all the gray areas is fucking annoying, so I'm not gonna get into, like, the nitty-gritty of it, but, I'd like to be straightforward with all of you. When I was 18, I was in contact with minors. I cut all of them off in June of 2023 out of paranoia, and because I had outgrown those friendships. By the time I cut contact with them, I'd only been 18 for 9 months, and I knew most of them, like, long before I turned 18. I knew most of them starting from when I was, like, 16, and, you know, they weren't much younger than me. They were all, like, mostly 17. Like, I'm sorry, that's not grooming. But I will be honest, besides all the 17-year-olds, there was, like, one exception. Okay, we're gonna talk about Maryland Dude again. For context, he would often choose my friends for me, and would often put me in contact with people who weren't safe for me to be around. For example, he had me befriend Julian and Malachi for a few months in 2022. And so, when he was choosing my friends and, like, putting me in contact with people, he put me in contact with one of my fans, and I wasn't even aware that she was, like, a fan of me. I thought, like Maryland Dude and this girl were just, like chill with each other. I didn't know who she was. I had no idea. I didn't even know her age until, like, long after we were introduced to each other, because we just, like, didn't talk very much. She was 15. I had no idea. The only reason I found out is because I saw posts of people saying how creepy it was that I was talking to a 15-year-old, and I didn't even know, like, she was 15 until I saw that. Like, until people started saying things like that. So I cut contact with her a while after I found out for multiple reasons, her age and her being a Birdie fan being two of those reasons. I would like to be straightforward with the fact that I have talked to minors in 2023, somewhat recently, as of this recording in March of 2024. That's when I'm saying this. It's right after, like, I made the video on my other, like, side channel announcing I was leaving. Sorry, timing is weird. I didn't befriend any of the minors that I talked to recently. I talked to these people because I had problems with them and I wanted to solve them in a professional manner. I had no intention of staying in contact with them or like becoming friends because I don't want to. I cut them all off after our problems were resolved, and if they asked to befriend me, I would just tell them no. For like a year, I've had like 2 friends, and they're both 20, so this is just a lie. And the people tossing around these allegations are Birdie Twitter lurkers, because those are the people who were commenting on my video, because my side account was somewhat pretty hidden. The only people who knew about it were like parasocial weird birdie people, right? I would like to point out how hypocritical this is, because if you are an adult navigating that side of Twitter constantly, you are always interacting with minors. Don't act like you're better than me, you are a bunch of creeps. Also, these same commenters were angry that I wouldn't talk to a minor, but also angry that I talked to minors in the past. In particular, I received backlash for not forgiving Dragy, who, during the making of this video, is still continuing to try to contact me and to basically harass me. They have spent days trying to send me friend requests and trying to send other people to put me in contact with them. They were mostly trying to contact me through that side account, which is part of the reason that I abandoned it, because, I'm just too old for this, honestly. I'm too old to be dealing with these kind of people. I'm too old to, like, it's like high school drama. I just don't want to do it. It's ridiculous. I don't want it. I don't want it. So obviously, I did what an adult would do in this situation, and I ignored them, because I don't want anything to do with them. At one point, they sent me a really long apology on my side account, despite how obvious it was I didn't want to talk, and it was something about how they wanted to explain themselves because, like, and it was basically them, like saying how much they missed me, and, like, how sorry they were, and how they want to have a talk with me to try to disprove that they made the fake screenshot of me molesting my sister, which, like, I don't want to talk to them, because who else could it have been? They've got a history of doing this. And, like, I don't forgive them. I don't want to talk to them. I just don't want anything to do with it. I don't want anything to do with this person. I don't trust them. Aside from the things that I've mentioned in this video, they aren't a very good person. And, like, I don't want to get into that because it's personal and it's petty and it's drama, and I don't want to deal with this. So I refused to respond. I actually had Al, the other owner of the account, forward a message to them explaining that I don't forgive them and we both want to be left alone, because it's ridiculous that they are going to this extent to try to contact me when I want nothing to do with them, and that has been established. I've told them personally I don't want to talk to them ever again, so they should respect that. So they went and told a bunch of Birdie Twitter people that I didn't want to talk to them, and it caused outrage in a bunch of little Cheeto finger Twitter jerk-offs for some fucking reason. So yeah, those are the kind of people spreading this allegation. They're a bunch of liars and hypocrites. Also, I'd like to point out how funny this is, because the age of 18, how old I was when these rumors started being made, is still old enough to be in high school. If I was still in school during that time, I would be surrounded by minors that same age whether I wanted to or not. This argument is stupid. Also, I'm Aeroace. What kind of sexual thing would I want to use minors for? I don't want to do sexual things with anyone, let alone children. That's disgusting. Okay, now that we're done here, let's wrap things up. Again, this is the first and last time I'm ever gonna talk about these things unless I do something seriously wrong and need to address it, so please don't try to spread this kind of negativity on my channel anymore. Also, if you're gonna continue to be weird about birdie drama, I will block you for my own safety, along with the safety of my friends and family. The people posting about me are mostly my exes and my abusers whose main goal is to try to hurt me. I'm not going to be talking about the people who are saying things about me nowadays, but we need to stop giving these people platforms. They're allowed to get away with causing damage to me because it's easy, and claiming I abused them when I didn't is their bread and butter. From now on, this is a place for my art, and none of my personal issues are going to enter this space ever again, so please be respectful of that. Don't obsess over me, don't sexualize me. If you have a crush on me, please keep it to yourself. I'm Aeroace and romance repulsed and sex repulsed. don't post weird, chronically online shit about me. Like, just stop prodding into my personal life. It's stalkerish and weird and shouldn't be so normalized. Don't be a parasocial Andy. Don't contact my parents or my 16-year-old sister. Yes, people do this. Don't harass me. Don't pretend to be me. This is more of a personal gripe, but please, and I mean please, don't take heavy inspiration from my art. Please don't interact with me if you're an avid follower of Birdie Twitter and Birdie-related Curious Cat threads. And if you really don't like me, then just don't interact with my content. Okay, as long as you don't do any of those things, then we're all good-o here. If you have any friends who are into birdie drama, maybe try showing them this video, or even better, just tell them to stop. This kind of culture surrounding me is unhealthy and actually disturbing as hell. Well, anyways, I'll see you all later. A bunch of fun art is coming soon. Bye! It's good to be back.